each other, or touch each other. Okay, why is that? Because they have no size really. There's no way to break down the kind of size or the space between them also. Because it's considered the smallest thing you can imagine. You cannot even consider measure the size or something like that. Okay? And so therefore there is no space at all also between them. Okay, so they become like completely equal. Yeah, do you understand what I'm saying? Does that mean anything? Okay. Sorry, let's read the verse. I think we'll have. Okay. No penetration can there be of particle by particle. Okay, there are partless particles. They're supposed to touch or come into contact. But they don't have parts, so they cannot touch only on one side. So the only way you can imagine is they kind of come into each other.
Yeah.
Okay? But they are full, like they're material. They don't have any empty space inside. So it's not like you can force them together. Okay? So, therefore, they're both the same in lacking volume. Okay? Because they're the smallest particle, you cannot say there is this or that big. It's just kind of the smallest unit imaginable. Okay? So, but even when you try to explain that contact using kind of physical analogy, you come to also things that don't make sense based on this smallest particle.
Tanda dela nazuki samno tanya deta tanda dunchen de yang nazu kaptu chidu wana ko karichi ni tu show mari se chi nazu sem de lesar bata dunchen ni yoba ina ani koni karichi tu show mari se keje chigli ko bata di chidu khozo ge bena chera mawa dan tiso karla wo se dunchen chawa de cha yo mari se ko cha shi tan cha yo mari se odi ti ge namcha de ge an tanda de cha me ba ina ko khawani tu bo re kawa ni ko la che wo re se keje chigli ko bata bena ani tad de ro ji shogo ro ji yoba ina del chiksha on di ban ki ma de ko cha shi mang bu ji che do de cha shi chiksha do de cha shi chiksha do de cha shi chiksha khozo ge tawa khona lune de karla wo se bi dunchen se de cha che yo ma res la ta tambo ni de che du ti ka sa da de del che ge de se de ka sa ba kan se na de del che ge na del cha shi chik le go ta kyorang ge dunchen ki ma la sha ge de la cha ma bu chi cha ge lo a se de che du da da ya de chi ko ra da ge yo ni gang la she so ya dunchen de kyorang ge cha shi me ba re se ni kyorang ge la ta ni zong de ani 초당 우당 띵당 와당 근데 남샤 체선은 그런 차시 매바 샤도는 차시 영현직 차도로 쓰네 다기 강 셰버 대단 집에 직선제는 갑대다야 저런 게 dunren tawi chame ge durte ni pansun thugre se to gana ta kyorange dunren yamanna dunren chame ge bade khele ki yo ma des yamanna kyorange thegre se de khele yo ma gansana ko chame ye ko ka des ti ko da chashi che yo ma was budik ko ade dik to ni lego gadda do chi yo ra dandeni man gawa do chi shi ko ro ti chi du ni lesa de ni lego shita do.
So maybe you're not so familiar with this, so it's good to say a few words about this idea of the smallest particles. So according to the Vaibhashika, they have this idea that if you break down material substance, you can find smaller and smaller types of particles until in the end you have what they call the smallest particle. Because otherwise you can always subdivide it and so you never find anything. So they have this theory that in the end there is something which really cannot be divided. Okay. And so that's the kind of Buddhist Savaka vehicle school analysis of material reality. Now that smallest particle, in order to be really smallest particle, they define it as being without parts. Right? It is not divisible. Indivisible. Yeah, we can say that. Indivisible. Okay. Otherwise, you could say it's not the smallest one. If you could cut it in half, or you could take one side and one side, it's not the small. But now, if you think carefully, like how can such a thing come in? Two of those particles come in contact with each other. For example, when two things touch. Nicola is using a paper, I have another paper. For example, these two things, they can touch each other, right?
Yeah.
Because there's this side and there's this side that touches, and then this right side, they don't touch, right? So they can touch from one side. But if they have no parts, how can they touch? They have to touch from all sides at the same time. Right? Otherwise, it means they're touching only from half of their, their presence. Okay? So now if they touch completely from all sides, that means they merge together. They completely become one. Okay? But they also have the idea that they're indivisible. So that it doesn't mean like they're half empty, for example. And they can kind of fit into each other. They're solid. And so just this idea of a partless particle sounds convenient to explain things, but if you analyze the relations into which these particles can come with each other, they really don't make sense. For something to come in contact with something else, it needs to have sides and parts, and it needs to have some sort of different areas that it exists. And so this is what we're talking about here. If you try to explain how the sense and sense objects come into contact, explaining their materiality, so to speak, and then you end up talking about the atoms or the particles that make it. These atoms are made by the smallest particle. How do they come into contact? There's no way to explain it. It also makes no sense. And this is what we're talking about. And then maybe we stop here. That's a good thing to contemplate until it's more. But we have time for some questions. Some questions about the particles and atoms.
No, I'm just kidding. I was going to say, now that nothing works and nothing's happening, what to do with my life? No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, please.
It's so deep. I mean, it's... Yeah, someone has another question.
No.
No, it's good. Another question.
No question?
I just have one small question, and that is, right before verse 93, this is the section about examining the cause of sensation, right? And I don't understand how those particles have anything to do with sensation.
Oh yeah. Right.
Tadi dire, tanga zo sorwa kewar chebala, ani jusum gores, juken sum nyam choni, ani shini sorwa kewres. Tabena ngala sorwa chikewina yuchi gores. Ani ngeki mik shipa kewar chibe wangbu chi gores. Ani tadung titseng mare, ani shipa chiyang gores. Te sum nyam dum zombala teni, ani rekpata, ani sorwa kewres. Odi ti chedu manda, ani ta di sum ka de, ani countries race, that what it is the water. Koran so parts of Tegu or Etam, Yamana was a mountain, I gave you a country race and it was it on the water. That did you do? I'm not the ripadi, and it cotes on I am, Jigun was. And it mountain, it tomba chason and Kotikma was.
Okay, so generally sensation we consider to have threefold kind of cause and conditions that cause it to occur. Sensation is pleasure or pain, yeah? So what causes that pleasure to arise? You need three things: the object, the sense faculty that perceives it, and the consciousness that kind of is aware of that experience. For example, if I drink delicious coffee, I have a sense of pleasure because I have the taste faculty that touches the object of the coffee and the awareness or the consciousness of that. Okay, so that causes the sensation to arise of pleasure. And so now here we're analyzing how does those three things come together to create sensation. And so we analyze this relation between the object and especially how those three things can come into contact with each other so as to create the sensation. So that's why we call this analysis of the cause of sensations. Because it is the relation between those factors that give rise to the sensation.
We were just talking about two particles.
Yes. So so the object of the eye, for example, the taste organ is the coffee, yeah? How does that object come in contact with the organ? And that with the consciousness. This is what we're looking at now. If the coffee is made of atoms and particles, how do these atoms come into contact with the tongue, which is the sense organ?
Right.
How do the atoms that make the tongue touch the atoms of the coffee?
Right.
And then we say, okay, we drink and it looks real, right? But when you analyze, how does the contact really take place? And when you analyze all the ways in which it can occur, don't make any sense. That's what we're looking at.
That's why it doesn't make
Tanda,
sense.
tanda nga zuchik le di, tanda di edum di shukchibu shikla, dendren. Di karichini shikwa re se du, chu takwa nunghen, chu yore, dentu re se ngi, ganza maan chi shu ge, kama tuksa de kari tukwa re se du, dendren chame se du tukwa. Ta nga zuke, rakwa yo ma re